Hello, my name is Logan Berrett, and I'm going to be presenting about how the federal government should regulate the cost of pharmaceuticals. Something many of us are aware of is how expensive pharmaceuticals can be. Prescription drug prices are getting higher every year, and the increase in price cannot be explained merely due to inflation, but rather through price hikes that are decided upon by the pharmaceutical companies themselves. Life-saving medications are steeply on the rise, as well as other medications that simply just make life better or easier to live. And Americans spent $535 billion on prescription drugs last year, which is an increase of 50% since 2010. So far in 2019, there has been price hikes on over 1,000 drugs, and it's early in the year, so we can expect that number to go up. The example of the EpiPen really helps us to better see how expensive pharmaceuticals really are getting. And in 2007, the EpiPen started off at a price of under $100 for a 2-pack. But as of 2016, the price had soared to a whopping $608 for that same 2-pack. And unfortunately, EpiPens do not last forever. They do need to be replaced, and so that regular replacement of such a vital emergency drug can get extremely pricey over time, as you would imagine. And to put it even further, lots of people don't simply have one 2-pack at a time because they need that life-saving medication in different situations. So they might have a set in their car, they might have a set in their home, their purse, etc. And so obviously $608 every time you need to replace it for each location can add up very quickly. And so this recurring expense that would likely break the bank for many is an example of why these drug prices really need to be regulated. Due to the severity of this issue and its importance, many politicians and experts have proposed potential solutions to address the problem. I'd like to go into a few of those, starting with patent law reform. It's obviously understandable that patents should be granted to these companies that put in all their time, money, research, skill, risk into developing these drugs. However, even though patents are necessary, the government could change and adjust the rules surrounding them. One possible regulation could involve the government producing a generic replica of the drug and selling it far before the company patent expired, but in the meantime giving a royalty to the original creator of the drug. This is of course only one possible solution surrounding patent law that could help address these exorbitant prices, but it's definitely something to look into. Another possible solution involves increasing public medical research. There's already a great deal of public medical research that goes on in our country in order to research and produce new drugs, but if we were to ramp that up and produce more results, that could definitely result in a decreased burden on the consumer because the government would be able to sell these drugs that they make themselves at a reduced price compared to the pharmaceutical companies. And in order to maintain motivation within these government programs, they could give cash rewards for those that innovate best. A third possible solution would simply be imposing price ceilings. This is obviously a little more transparent. The government would step in and set specific prices for specific drugs that couldn't be exceeded in the marketplace. And from the perspective of the pharmaceutical companies, obviously that would be one of the last things they would want. It would seem unfair to them, especially because of the time and money that they put into producing the drugs. But the counterpoint to this is that many consider healthcare to be a public good. And there's a difference between regulating the price of a luxury good like a yacht or a fancy car and making sure needed and life-saving medications stay affordable. With all that being said, I would like to address the question why the government themselves needs to step in. Well, that answer is pretty simple, really. Pharmaceutical companies make a great deal of money off the drugs they produce. They didn't get into the business to merely break even and produce all these drugs out of the goodness of their heart, but rather their goal is to maximize profits and increase shareholder wealth. And because pharmaceutical companies are not likely to reduce their prices, the government will have to be the one that steps in. One common thread among those that oppose government regulation is that if you regulate too much, innovation will be stifled. And there's obviously some truth to the notion that without money to incentivize these drug companies and drug developers and researchers into making drugs, there will be less innovation because the desire won't be there. But the regulation does not need to eliminate incentives. One suggested course of action could include cash rewards for whoever innovates in the most helpful way, or if their drug ultimately goes to market or something like that. And other ways to incentivize could also be explored. This is just one example. But the main point is that these incentives would not be at the expense of the consumer as they are now. Though regulation will help control prices, it is important to not regulate too much or too little. Too much regulation could result in an industry that doesn't progress as much as it needs to, and too little regulation would most likely not fully address the problem of the high-cost pharmaceuticals. At the end of the day, pharmaceutical prices are very high and they don't seem to be going down anytime soon. Life-saving medications are oftentimes priced at extremely high levels that are unaffordable to many individuals. And solutions such as patent law reform, increasing public medical research, and imposing price ceilings could all help reduce the burden of these high drug prices. These solutions, among others, need to be conducted carefully in order to still promote innovation while making sure that the prices drop to an affordable level. The pharmaceutical companies are not going to drop the prices themselves, so the federal government needs to step in. Thank you.